first glance, nothing seems to have changed. No dramatic battlefield breakthrough, no sudden collapse of front lines, no televised declaration of a new phase of war. And yet, behind closed doors in Washington and Moscow, alarms are quietly ringing. According to multiple intelligence assessments circulating among Western allies, the CIA has issued an urgent warning to Moscow, not through public channels, but via signals, intermediaries, and unmistakable strategic messaging. The reason is not what Ukraine has done loudly, but what it has done silently. This is the story of a war entering a new phase in 2025, not defined by tanks rolling forward, but by restraint, recalibration, and strategic patience. Ukraine has shifted its approach, and the shift is subtle enough that many observers have missed it entirely, but intelligence agencies have not. Today, we break down what this silent strategy shift really means, why the CIA felt compelled to warn Moscow, and how this development could reshape the trajectory of the war in Ukraine. Why an urgent alert, and why now? The phrase urgent alert carries a specific meaning in intelligence circles. It does not imply panic, nor does it suggest an imminent catastrophic strike. Rather, it signals that a fundamental assumption held by an adversary is no longer valid. For much of the war, Russia has operated under a core belief that Ukraine's capacity to sustain prolonged resistance depends almost entirely on visible Western support, loud political backing, and continuous frontline pressure. In 2025, that assumption is eroding. The CIA's warning, according to analysts, is not about a single operation or weapons system. It is about a strategic realignment, one that increases long-term risk for Russia while reducing short-term predictability. Ukraine is no longer fighting the war Russia expects. This is precisely why the alert matters. Intelligence agencies exist to interpret patterns before they explode into crises. And the pattern now emerging suggests Ukraine has shifted from reactive defense and headline-grabbing counteroffensives to something far more difficult to counter: systemic pressure. Section 2. The end of noise, the beginning of quiet power. In earlier phases of the war, Ukraine's strategy relied heavily on visible momentum. Counteroffensives were announced, weapon deliveries were celebrated, territorial gains were highlighted in daily updates. This visibility served political and morale purposes, both domestically and internationally. But visibility comes at a cost. Every announcement creates expectations. Every declared objective offers Russia a target. In 2025, Ukraine appears to have deliberately reduced the noise. Military movements are less publicized. Operational details are tightly compartmentalized. Even Western officials now speak in broader terms, avoiding specifics. This is not accidental. It is strategic. The CIA's assessment reportedly notes a shift toward decentralized operations, layered pressure points, and long-term attrition, not of troops alone, but of logistics, command cohesion, and political stamina. This quiet power frustrates traditional intelligence models. When fewer signals are broadcast, adversaries must guess, and guessing wrong can be catastrophic. What exactly has Ukraine changed? Ukraine's silent strategy shift can be understood across 4 key dimensions. First, operational tempo. Rather than pursuing large-scale, high-risk offensives, Ukraine is managing tempo. Pressure is applied unevenly, intensified in some sectors, paused in others. This forces Russia to maintain constant readiness everywhere, draining resources and morale. Second, target prioritization. The focus has moved away from symbolic territorial gains toward functional degradation. Supply depots, repair facilities, electronic warfare nodes, and command relays have become higher priorities than cities or landmarks. Third, strategic patience. Ukraine is no longer rushing to prove progress. Time itself has become a weapon. Every month that Russia must sustain high expenditures, recruitment, and internal control mechanisms without decisive success compounds strain. Fourth, psychological ambiguity. Perhaps most importantly, Ukraine is allowing uncertainty to do the work. When Russia cannot confidently predict Ukraine's next move, it must assume the worst and plan accordingly. This combination is deeply unsettling to Moscow, and intelligence agencies know it. Section 4. Why the CIA warned Moscow instead of staying silent. A natural question arises: why would the CIA warn Moscow at all? The answer lies in escalation management. The warning is not a courtesy, it is a boundary marker. By signaling awareness of Ukraine's evolving strategy, the United States is communicating two things simultaneously. First, it is signaling to Russia that misinterpretation could lead to dangerous escalation. Quiet strategies are often mistaken for preparation for something much larger. The warning reduces the risk of Russia overreacting based on faulty assumptions. Second, it reinforces deterrence. By showing that U.S. intelligence is closely tracking developments, Washington is reminding Moscow that surprise works both ways. This dual message, caution and confidence, is a hallmark of modern intelligence diplomacy. Moscow's strategic dilemma. From Moscow's perspective, Ukraine's silence is more troubling than its previous offensives. Large attacks can be anticipated, quiet shifts cannot. Russia now faces a dilemma: either commit more resources to regain initiative or risk slow erosion of its operational capacity. Both options carry costs. Increasing commitment strains the economy and domestic stability. Reducing pressure invites Ukraine to shape the battlefield over time. This is precisely the bind Ukraine appears to be creating. Russian military planners must now defend against threats they cannot clearly see, measure, or time. Intelligence gaps widen, command stress increases, mistakes become more likely. Section 6. The role of Western intelligence in 2025. Contrary to popular narratives, Western intelligence agencies are not directing Ukraine's battlefield decisions. However, they are deeply involved in strategic assessment, risk analysis, and escalation control. In 2025, intelligence cooperation has become more sophisticated, less about targeting data and more about systems analysis. The CIA's role in this context is to ensure that shifts in Ukrainian strategy do not inadvertently trigger catastrophic miscalculations by Russia. The urgent alert should be understood as part of this balancing act. Section 7. What would a misread look like? History offers sobering lessons about wars where silence was misinterpreted. A pause mistaken for weakness. A restraint mistaken for preparation, a defensive posture mistaken for deception. Any of these misreads could provoke escalation beyond Ukraine's intentions. The CIA's warning aims to narrow the space for such misinterpretations. The information war dimension. Another layer of Ukraine's silent shift lies in information warfare. By reducing public signaling, Ukraine has made Russian propaganda less effective. Without clear narratives to counter, misinformation loses coherence. At the same time, ambiguity fuels doubt within Russian information channels. Contradictions emerge. Confidence erodes. Silence, in this sense, becomes a strategic asset. Section 9. Domestic implications for Ukraine. Internally, this shift reflects confidence rather than desperation. A country fighting for survival does not slow down messaging unless it believes time is no longer working against it. Ukraine's leadership appears increasingly focused on sustainability rather than spectacle. This maturity marks a significant evolution from earlier phases of the war. Section 10. What comes next? The most important thing to understand about Ukraine's silent strategy is that it resists prediction. There may be no dramatic moment to point to, no single battle that defines success or failure. Instead, progress will appear incremental until suddenly it is not. This is the nature of strategic pressure. The CIA's urgent alert is not a warning of immediate catastrophe, it is a recognition that the war's logic has changed.
Why 2025 is a turning year. Wars often pivot not on strength, but on adaptation. Ukraine's ability to change how it fights without announcing the change suggests a deeper strategic confidence. Russia's difficulty in responding reveals a growing rigidity. This asymmetry may define the year ahead. Section 12. Final thoughts. The headline may read, CIA issues urgent alert to Moscow, but the real story lies beneath the surface. Ukraine has learned that sometimes the most powerful move is not an advance, but a recalibration. Not noise, but quiet. Not spectacle, but pressure. And in 2025, that quiet may prove louder than any offensive yet.